Alright, this is the last question on the Unit 2 Mid-Study Guide. I'm going to graph it first and then we'll answer the questions below. So the first function we have is y is equal to 4x minus 3. Again, this is slope-intercept form. We know that this is our y-intercept, and we know all y-intercepts will cross the y-axis. So we have a y-intercept at negative 3. And then we have a slope, which is our m, of 4. So our slope is 4 over 1. So we're going to go up 4 over 1, 4 over 1, up 4 over 1, and then we can go the reverse. I'm going to take my ruler and go ahead and draw my line through it. I'm going to go ahead and label it y equals 4x minus 3. Let's go ahead and answer the questions below about it. From this we can tell that it is a linear function. I'm going to give you a minute to think about the rest real quick before we continue. So remember, the domain for all the functions that we'll learn in Math 1 is going to be from negative infinity, less than x, because that's the domain, less than infinity. All linear functions have the same range, negative infinity, less than y, less than infinity. We already talked about the y-intercept being negative 3. The thing we have to remember is that we have to write it as an ordered pair. And linear functions do not have a horizontal asymptote, so I'm going to write none. So let's go on to our second one. So our second function that we're given y is equal to 2 to the x minus 1. Now since we have an x for an exponent, we know that this is going to be an exponential function. So the first thing we want to do, we want to draw our horizontal asymptote. Remember, our horizontal asymptote is always our k, or the number after x. So we're going to have a horizontal asymptote at negative 1. So I'm going to draw my horizontal asymptote. At negative 1. And I'm going to create a quick xy table. I'm going to do 0, 1, and 2. So if I plug in 0, we have 2 to the 0 minus 1. I'm going to go through this kind of quick because this is just review. 2 to the 0 is 1. 1 minus 0 is 0, so we know that's 0. We plug in 1, we have 2 to the 1 minus 1. 2 to the 1 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have 1. And then if we do 2 squared minus 1 is 4 minus 1, which is 3. So I'm going to plot these 3 points. So we have 0, 0. We have 1, 1. And we have 2, 3, so over 2 up 3. And if I want to do one more, I could do 2 to the 3rd minus 1, which is 8 minus 1, which is 7. So we can do 3, we can do 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can kind of see the curve of the exponential function. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that real quick. It really just takes practice to get that curve just right. One thing you have to make sure though is that this will never go below your horizontal asymptote. Now I have it sideways, but this will never curve below it, and it's going to keep going on and on forever, and it'll get closer and closer and closer to the horizontal asymptote, but it will never cross. And this blue one was y equals 2 to the x minus 1. Bam. So there's our graph. And we can actually see that although we aren't doing systems with the linear and exponential, we can actually see where they cross. And they cross at 1, 1. But let's go and answer these last questions. So we have this function. We know it's exponential, and we talked about y earlier. When we look at our graph, it can go, when we're talking about the domain, so we're talking about the domain, it can go forever to the left. So I'm going to put negative infinity, less than x less than, and it can keep going on to the right forever and ever. So negative infinity. For our range, we know it's less than y, less than, and this is how low it can go. Now when we look at our graph, we know that this graph will never go below -1. So this blue graph, our exponential function, will never go below -1. But it can go up forever to infinity. I'm sorry, I was writing that. So from -1 to infinity, our y-intercept is where our graph crosses the y at, and it crosses at 0. We can also go to our table. Wherever x is 0, that is our y-intercept. So y-intercept is 0, 0. And remember, our horizontal asymptote is the number after x, so it's -1, but it is a line, so we have to write it as an equation. So we have y is equal to -1. And the very last thing that we have, the last question, says where do the two functions intersect at? And we talked about that. It intersects at 1, 1. And that is it for our study guide. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to click back on any of the videos that you have, and hopefully you'll be ready for the Unit 2 mid-test.